We acknowledge the Ancient Ones, the Greater Shamanic Council of Light, Hermes, both Trismegistus and Seshet, Lady of the Measuring Cord, as above so below, as within so without. We acknowledge Imhotep, Architect of the Cosmos. May the earth be the mirror of heaven. We acknowledge the Sacred Order of the Magi, and all throughout history who knew, like now, a turning of the ages. We acknowledge the Master Builders of Göbekli Tepe and the Great Shining Ones at Kalash. The courage and knowledge of the Polynesian wayfinders traversing the great oceans. We acknowledge the prophetic traditions of Ezekiel and Daniel, the traditions of Avalon, the Merlin, and the Round Table, the calendric wizardry of the Maya, and the Venus teachings from Mesoamerica, the Jupiter teachings originating in China, and the Vedic lunar mansion traditions, the Babylonian and Sumerian sidereal zodiacs, the brilliant Hellenistic invention of the seasonal zodiac. The Neolithic peoples around the planet, some still today, honoring the sacred connection between the land and the sky. The Tuatha De Danann in Ireland, who created a time of 2,000 years of peace, the builders of Newgrange. My teachers that are not in human form, Mount Shasta, the Grandfather Rock at the Wonderland of Rocks in Joshua Tree, Mount Haleakala on Maui, the Fish Lake Valley, Hierophany, and the sacred landscapes around the planet, the astrosophy of Rudolf Steiner, and the esoteric astrology of DK in the Tibetan, both presaging the shamanic astrology paradigm, and particularly the archetypal visions of C.G. Jung and the cosmology of my mentor, Dane Rajar. For these and more we give.
This is time for the monthly vlogcast. This, I think, is the 10th one that I've done since we started this series. I'm here today with Mary Kern, the president of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School. We're doing this right kind of at the peak, right in the center part, really, of the full moon, the Capricorn full moon, the full moon that is closest to the June solstice. And our topic today is going to be this continuation of the deeper dives into the mystery schools that I think I've done most of these with you, Mary. And we've done 9, this will make the 10th and the 11th. So we've done 9 of them already. The ones we've done before, you can see up on from the SAM's website. There's a section there, there's all the vlogcasts. So this is 10 and 11, and following our presentation today, there will only be one more left, and that will be the Cancer Mystery School, which we haven't done yet. Now, the reason why we're doing Sagittarius and Leo today is for the Sagittarian perspective, this full moon is very, very close to galactic center. In fact, just before it hit the exact full moon, it was right on galactic center, which is at this time in history is about 27, 28 degrees Sagittarius. Leo is in the spotlight now because of the big event. One of the big events of July is the Venus-Mars conjunction in the evening sky, and that will be in Leo. And the next we could say ceremonial seasonal event coming up is the Leo cross quarter, the one that is sometimes called Lunisad or Llamas. So we're going to put our attention on those two today. It's the intent of these investigations. This is not to do some long, comprehensive teaching about these mystery schools. There's a lot there, and we can refer you to the courses, to the books. It goes into a deeper dive into all of it. The purpose of our investigations now, and we're going to invoke the spirit of Merlin, of Avalon, of Arthur and the Round Table, because what that time period represented was another time period like now, a turning of the ages. And the mission and purpose of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School is similar to what was happening at that time period, where individuals who were the Magi or the Merlins or the priestesses of Avalon had a task, which was to recognize and honor the most authentic wisdom of the past, of our predecessors, the lineages associated with that, be absolutely realistic about what the current time period is that they were in and what we're in, and then to be able to be open to dream it forward. You know, what is the really new material that's coming through? And gosh, Mary, I mean, to be doing this right now, which is at the point of an inrushing from the galaxy. You know, that's the purpose of the June solstice. One of the purposes of the June solstice time is that the galactic edge is being highlighted. And that's where new creation comes in. So there is certainly the need for new ideas about these mystery schools and about everything about the mystery. All right. Our job as shamanic astrologers is to help redream that, to co-create with great mystery at this time period. So our project is to then, on a more practical level here, discuss the eternal essence of, in this case, 2 of the 12 mystery schools, and then to be able to perceive how over the course of history, in fact, if we really wanted to speculate, we could say 300,000 years of history of being Homo sapien and the different versions of Homo sapien, that to look at how the essence was seen together with what humans were choosing as its content. You know, so there would be different ways of life at different time periods, different cultural realities. And we have to look realistically at what the content of a mystery school is now, and then to be able to see how we can dream it forward. So it's this difference between the essence, the eternal essence, and then to be able to be, realistic about what content has worked or what hasn't worked, and then to be able to see how can we dream this forward. So that's our project here today. Okay, now to get started with this, if we're going to be diving into Sagittarius and we're going to be diving into Leo, some provisional background information about how these 2 mystery schools, and by the way, for those who are listening, when I use the word mystery school, you can think of sign, but not sun sign. You know, so basically the understanding of the essence of a mystery school or a sign is going to be able to be used then at any part of the chart, you know, moon, Venus, Mars, sun, rising sign, and so on. So you can plug it into the script in different places, but you really have to get a sense of what the essence is of the mystery school itself. So if we started with Sagittarius, the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School places Sagittarius in one of the 3 categories, which other astrologers call modalities. And we call the particular modality that Sagittarius is part of is called in service to spirit. And that is then contrasted with another modality, which is called householder or culture bearer. And then the third one is self-exploration or self-interest. And we'll be looking at the Leo one after Sagittarius, and that's the one that is within self-interest, self-exploration. So we'll be looking at 2 different modalities today. It also turns out that both of these today are in the element of fire. So we can see what they share with fire and then how they're different as far as what modality they're involved with. One being in service to spirit, and one being about self-exploration. Now, what in the world is meant by in service to spirit? And by the way, the four that are in that category in the school, which have been in other types of astrology, they call it the mutable signs. So it'd be Sagittarius, Gemini, Pisces, and Virgo. What makes something in service to spirit is that their motive, the motive for activity, the motive for life purpose, the motive for why that person is alive, is not to do something within the culture, like marriage, family, regular kinds of jobs that hold the culture together from one generation to the next. That's the householder culture bearer. But it's also not for self-exploration per se, or self-interest. So in service to spirit means, where do we get direction from? We get it from spirit. And each of those four are different ways of that happening. The Sagittarian one, operating within the fire element, is getting it directly from the inspiration that comes from connecting from the solar logos, from great mystery itself. And so the way that Sagittarius, we could say, serves or is in service to spirit is by having that commitment to go as far as one can go to get to the truth. More about that as we go through. So its motive is not, what do I do for my family? What do I do for? I'm not doing this for myself. I'm doing this for the world, or I'm doing it because I have to. It's my responsibility to be the one who does that. Okay. Now, the expressions self-interest or self-exploration is not to be confused with selfish. So I mean, in the sense of Leo, there's a commitment to explore what it is to be Leo for its own sake, not for anyone else. It's like, let's just see what happens with this. I mean, if we were doing Aquarius, it's a grand experiment, but for Leo, it's for other reasons, as we'll see. So those are the categories, but this may then be a good point before we go into each of them individually to discuss what in shamanic astrology do we mean by fire? What is the fire element? Now, this is related to a big issue in the shamanic astrology mystery school, which is the interrelatedness, the reciprocity of evolution and involution, one not being better or worse than the other. And so imagine for a moment a pyramid. And at the bottom of the pyramid would be the most dense. And then at the top of the pyramid would be the most subtle. And so we recognize, this is more like the alchemical approach. It's also discussed by other astrologers as far as the Jungian connection between the elements and the psychological types. But you would have earth at the bottom, the most dense. And then as you would go up the pyramid, then you would have water. And then you would go up further, and then you'd have air. And then you would have fire at the top, the most subtle, the one closest to spirit, I guess you could say it that way. Now there is a fifth element, but that's the substratum, the ether that is surrounding the whole thing. But when there is manifestation into form, then it works through the four elements. Now the word, and this comes from the Jungian approach, the word for fire is intuition. Now sometimes that word intuition is conflated with a more emotional or feeling function version of intuition. All right. But in this approach, intuition is fire, and it's right brain. And actually, both of the ones we are discussing today would be right brain, meaning they're like the tip of the arrow, the tip of the spear. You don't think about it. It's actional, and it is at leading edge. So it's not that we're saying there's anything wrong with the thinking function or the other two, but the fire thing is it's an action to go toward its goal. And the three fire signs would have different objectives, and Sagittarius we'll be just about to get to. So fire, intuition function, and it's actional, and it's right brain. You don't analyze. So we can see how this works with Leo too when we get to Leo. Hopefully that gives you a little bit of background how we're engaging with this. So the next part, we're going to go now more deeply into Sagittarius, and this would have to do with its essence, its eternal essence. I'm going to read this paragraph, and that can get us started in our inquiry. The Sagittarius Mystery School is dedicated to the exploration of meaning and purpose. Its themes are generally about adventure, exploration, and philosophy. To boldly go where no one has gone before, Sagittarius believes the greatest way to be in service to spirit is to attend to one's own freedom and liberation first. Generally, a renunciate and non-secular Sagittarius values freedom with perpetual change and growth. At its best, Sagittarius ultimately is a lover of truth, not the ideals of truth. Now, I want to interject here that you can get clues as to the essence of the mystery school by including an understanding of its opposite, the resonant polarity. So, for example, to fully fathom, or not that that's ever possible fully, but to get a sense of Sagittarius, it's also helpful to know about Gemini. As we'll see as we get to Leo, to have a sense of Leo, is important to also have a sense of Aquarius. Like Gemini does make a contribution to Sagittarius, but then Sagittarius can solve some of the blind spots of Gemini. I mean, so they kind of work together like that. Sagittarius, the word in here, renunciate. Now that's a more archaic term. Not too many people use it anymore. There were times in history where there were a lot more renunciates than there are today. We're in a much more secular age. But the idea here with Sagittarius is that there is such a commitment to find meaning and purpose, to seek the truth, that's more important than sticking around, it's like the stories of Sagittarius, they ride into town, they can't wait to share the trail they found, but they can't wait to get on their horse and, continue the journey. Rather than, taking the time to go through all the stories, which we cannot really do in this shorter presentation, there are historical themes that could be associated with this. The labors of Hercules, Jason and the Argonauts, the Lewis and Clark expeditions, the original story of Tara, which is a marvelous story when we're speaking about the female version of Sagittarius. She was such a spiritual revolutionary that she brought into India a whole new understanding of what a woman could do, which would be through her own chaos in the background there, through our through a person's own efforts could gain enlightenment just through their own independence and their own consciousness, bringing a whole different archetype of the feminine, which is why for the feminine, we call Sagittarius Vision Quest Amazon, solar feminine, and this applies to Leo also. So it's an actional, independent, autonomous version of the feminine principle when applied to women. Usually in history, men who identified with the Sagittarian archetype worked with explorers, the adventurers, and the philosophers. And they could be spiritually oriented or just more physically oriented, you know, to climb to the highest mountain, and, you know, to go into the areas that nobody had ever been to before, the explorer thing. You know, Mary, when I'm thinking about this, one of the things that it seems that Sagittarius and Leo both have in common, they're both of the light, you know, so when we talk about fire, so therefore associated with them as part of their essence is enthusiasm and joyfulness and optimism, you know, so those qualities are there. And since I'm much more interested in our conversation today, or inquiry today, to explore the essence rather than some of the more well-known shadows, you know, associated with us, because it is the function of Leo and Sagittarius to be enthusiastic, to be joyful, you know, to be up, to look at life as a grand adventure, including the investigation of who we really are. Obviously, the shadow part of it is going to be something like no recognition of anything else. But that's again, our emphasis is not going to be on the shadow element, but rather what the essence, the eternal essence of these things are. Also, very important for Sagittarius is an old Hermann Hesse book called Journey to the East. That just at the time when you're most disgruntled, and this is kind of like a Jupiter return, when you think that nobody cares about the meaning of things anymore, that there's no more spiritual pathway, there is the discovery that, oh, it's going on all the time. That there are always those that are on the quote journey to the east, you know, which would be Shambhala or Shangri-La, you know, these different places where the ideals can be experienced, and that do exist somewhere, right? And so it's that quest for that is so important for the Sagittarian spirit, for the essence of Sagittarius. One of the things that I think it's important to bring up here, and I know I didn't want to do shadow too much, but one can see that to really be dedicated to the spirit of Sagittarius, it really has to be the love of truth, not the attachment to what you think is the truth, because it is a moving target. So that if you think you know the truth and hold on to it, then it's no longer Sagittarius. Then it becomes dogmatism, it becomes fundamentalism, which it would be one of the downsides of Sagittarius. So the love of truth, adventure, exploration, and philosophy. If we're trying to explore this from the perspective of past, present, and future, in the past, as I mentioned, it's more a renunciate path. You know, a person will choose not to be a householder, and they're not doing it just for their own self-interest. It's their job to be questing for meaning and purpose. And just, you know, we could have thousands of stories about that from the past, of individuals who have done that. In modern times, we could use as an example Jungian psychology. So in that whole movement that happened at the beginning of the 20th century, with many different forms of psychology emerging, the Jungian approach was really different than the other ones. Some of the others would say, what is the purpose of life? Sex. What is the purpose of life? Will. Or maybe it's survival. The Jungian approach said, though, the purpose is the quest for meaning. So all of those philosophers throughout history, all the psychologists throughout history that have put an emphasis on the quest for meaning and purpose would be associated with the Sagittarian approach. Okay, so that's a more modern way of, I think, of perceiving this. If we take it further, if we imagine a future Sagittarian mystery school, then it's like up to all of us to imagine, you know, where can we go that we haven't gone before? What would be the next way that global humanity can experience, or at least be dedicated to the truth, willing to go down a road they've not gone down before, to not settle for what someone else says is the way, you know? So it's quite liberating. It's really about freedom. And the freedom to be on that quest perpetually.
I think especially now, Daniel, with so many different narratives out there, questing which is the real truth, if there is a real truth, is so important. And not having visibility of that, or having some of that obscured is really a detriment to Sagittarius, because it's really about dropping all the dogma and seeing every changing truth. Beliefs they're corded to feelings that produce emotions. And that's why they're so hard to shift, is because people have these attachments.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And they're not, but they also haven't been given very much training that to support a desire to know. You know, it's just you regurgitate well, learn this, memorize this, and that's all you need to do. It actually, an educational system that is founded on something Sagittarian is going to be teaching people of the hunger to know, to go for the truth, to find out what's real, to teach them actually the inquiry and how to think and how to wonder and how to have an imagination and how to imagine things that have never happened yet, you know.
And that quest for meaning and purpose, it's a process, not a destination. That's so important to really remember. So doubt is both good and necessary for change and growth. So James Hollis, in his book Swampland of the Soul, made the statement that the only way we can remain faithful to the mystery of mystery is to preserve ambiguity. So certainty, is the enemy of truth. So not believing that everything is certain and having that little bit of a doubt is so important in this endeavor. Also then, Marcel Proust said that the real voyage of discovery consists not in seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So always being open to perceiving things differently from different points of view, like your adventurer that goes off into the mountains to see the world from so many different heights. I think that is, it's part of the essence, but it's also part of how we build this new world. is taking that forward. Mm-hmm.
And you can go back actually 100,000 years, 200,000 years. The people that set off in canoes, that some say now went from they were able to hug the shores of Antarctica, to go from Tasmania all the way over to Tierra del Fuego in the bottom of South America. the journeys that the Irish monks made in seeking the promised land, when they would take their made from the hides of animals, and they would go up the islands to Greenland and down to Baffin Island and down into Newfoundland. You know, what incredible journeys into the unknown, which was that Sagittarian spirit. You know, one of the stories that sometimes we tell about Sagittarius is the mountain climber who gets to the top of the mountain, and he feels great about that view, but almost the very next thing is he sees a higher mountain. And rather than feeling defeated, it's like, fantastic. Now what I know what I'll do next, because it's kind of like the old road songs, you know, the road goes on forever, that kind of thing, right? So that's all Sagittarian, and we can think of all kinds of road songs. You were sharing quotes, and one of my all-time favorite quotes is about Sagittarius. It gives you the flavor of Sagittarius, and this is in the Shamanic Astrology handbook, the original book. And this is a quote from Sir Richard Burton, not the actor, the English explorer. Wrote this in 1886. Of the gladdest moments in human life, methinks, is the departure upon a distant journey to unknown lands, shaking off with one mighty effort the fetters of habit, the leaden weight of routine, and the cloak of many cares, and the slavery of home. Man feels once more happy. The blood flows with the fast circulation of childhood, and afresh dawns the morn of life. Now, of course, that would be scraping against the chalkboard if you're Cancerian or Taurian.
Oh, yeah. How do you
The
partner with that person?
The slavery of home, right? You know, so,
it's like they want to keep that excitement of totally always discovering like a kid. And that's what turns them on. But also the amount of courage and curiosity.
Right.
Some of the adventures you cited, to have the courage to do that, you'd have to be connected to source, because you would have to be guided. I mean,
well, or seek, or truly inspired to find source. You know, I mean,
exactly.
That's where the inspiration is coming from.
Right.
And what you just said about the sort of the childhood aspect is kind of a bridge into Leo in just a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to, before we start that, and we'll dive into that here shortly, is how does the Gemini part fit in? It would be one of the very best things about Gemini, we won't get into the downside of it, is a curiosity. Mm-hmm. and an interest in so many different things. I mean, you would never say Gemini is dogmatic unless they had an attachment to their mind in a kind of in a way that's not free. But that contribution of being interested in many things is a contribution that can make to Sagittarius, and it's kind of an antidote to that shadow of dogmatism and fundamentalism. Yeah,
that's great.
So well, let's shift gears and look into the preeminent mystery school of self-exploration, really. And so if I was just to get us started by reading this paragraph about it, and by the way, these are from the explanation of the cards in the Shamanic Astrology card deck. Leo, self-exploration, self-interest. Remember, not selfish. The Leo Mystery School explores the activities and the willful actions of pure creation for its own sake, as an end in itself. These expressions of creation are exemplified by courage and a childlike joyousness and innocence, as if one is directly connected with divinity. At its best, Leo generously inspires others to be everything they can be. So some of the essential qualities being joy, confidence, audacity, centered on self, generosity that stems from self-love, and a creating for its own sake. Now, often for both men and women, I mean, we can identify it with the king or the queen archetype. Also, we could see it as the vision carriers, the creators, the stars, the leading man, the leading woman on the stage of life, because it's really fun to be there. And so what it is that you started us diving into was about a sort of a childlike thing that can also be in Sagittarius, so that tends to identify more with knowledge, is that it's like this imagery of a healthy 2-year-old. And the 2-year-old has sort of loving, supportive, non-smothering parents, and they're not judgmental or critical. So the 2-year-old is just making it up, pretending to be whatever they want to be. And they're not looking around to see whether it corresponds to some more perfect creation. For the feminine, this is called Amazon Queen. It's obviously the king or the star imagery, when applied to the masculine, but that works for both. King, queen, kind of interchangeable in that sense. The vision carrier, they're not the ones that do all the work, but it does not mean that they don't know what they're doing when they are confident in that place of self-love. So in our investigation here, let's look and see how this had been before. Back in what was a previous content of the Leo Mystery School's essence. And this is one that does really require us to go back to maybe 4,000 or 5,000, 6,000 years ago. The story I'm going to tell now, I don't believe would apply to the Neolithic people who were extremely egalitarian, in the pre-Neolithic, the indigenous people, the animist cultures. But about maybe 4,000, 5,000, 60,000 years ago, there were bloodlines. And sometimes those bloodlines were like identified with a Brahmin caste, and they were the elite group, like in India. Then it might be like the bloodline families of the pharaohs. And then later, of course, then became like the divine right of kings in the patriarchal cultures. Now, to me, that is a degradation of the tradition. There was a time where there would be different bloodlines, but in that original essence of this content of the Leo Mystery School, they actually, they did have a different quality than maybe other humans. But here's the deal. Their responsibility, we could say, was to model for humanity the finest qualities of what a human being can be. They would model that. They would be that. They would exemplify that. They would help other people be that. And the other thing is, they knew that their job was to serve the people, not elitism, not like we can sort of take care of the shadow side of Leo by a very, very simple statement. What is the shadow of Leo? I'm God and you're not. Like this false class and caste and so on. Now, another example I could give, and this is unfortunately bringing up the predicament of our current time. In the past, to be king, or to be queen, or to be, the high priest, or to be the Llama, or to be in that position of being the leading player, as it were. required spiritual initiation, philosophical training. People loved these individuals who were in that position, and they were honored. You know, the people needed the shaman. They needed although Leo's not specifically shaman, but whether it's the llama or the pharaoh, if it was a good pharaoh, right? You know, so, and they had philosophical training, spiritual initiation. Today, those that occupy those, quote, Leo positions, they have the most money or they have the biggest army. If it's a celebrity, well, it's because of it's like a hype. Today, the celebrities do not necessarily have any better qualities than anybody else. So there's been a great fall of essence, kind of a disconnect from essence that's happened in our current time.
Can I just say that the former king of Thailand was the only person in my lifetime I've known to have had the traits of both modeling the best humanity and kind of selflessly serving his people. I know he's no longer on the planet, but he spent a fourth of each year visiting a different quadrant of Thailand with a crew of experts just to see what crops and resources would best serve each region. And he, you know, he was so truly loved and revered that on the eve of his birthday, the whole country would stop, honor him, and pray for him. And like when I was there and got to witness that, it was amazing. It was inspiring, but it made me ask, well, what happened to all the rest of them?
Yeah, it's been a fall there now with the guy who's currently the king. I mean, it's just exactly the opposite. But it's fun. I love that you brought that example up because I lived in Thailand in 1963, 64, and he was king then.
Right.
And do you know what he was most known for at that point? I mean, just kind of on a more popular level. Everything you've said about it is right and true. Also, is that it's because of his love for jazz.
Oh no!
He was a jazz enthusiast, right?
You could connect him for that.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So he spent a lot of time in the West also, but he was well read. He had a philosophical background, spiritual initiation, and all the rest of that. So it's about the only example of that I even can think of. You know, if you look at who the current world leaders are, I doubt if they even spend any time in nature, not to speak of, spiritual initiation or philosophical training. You know, when a president says, "I'm proud of the fact that I don't ever read books," then wow.
Bottom of the Kali Yuga is where we are. And it's just natural. Those things, I guess, would dissipate. And what we need to bring back is precisely this. Yeah.
And actually, here's where Aquarius makes a contribution. See, if you think of both Leo and Aquarius, they both are about sovereignty and autonomy. And those are other characteristics of our expression: self-interest, self-exploration. I mean, Leo is definitely about the full realization of the self from a place of joyful, radiant self-love. And then, of course, it easily degenerates into, the egoic version. We're not talking about egoic version, but the emphasis is on me, my will, myself. I will be self-realized. Okay. Aquarius. The contribution of Aquarius is we all are, not just you. And I believe we discussed this in the Aquarian deep dive, which is the Aquarian dispensation. It's not like waiting for some new sun king or some savior or the return of Jesus or something like that, but it's the fact that we all are that spark of divinity. All of us can be Leo, if we could put it that way, in this more essential nature of what Leo is.
I would just say learning Leo has been such a big part of my life. And I think most of us, if we achieve it at all, it has to be in the later years. the baby boomers were born at a time when Pluto was in Leo, which affects so much of that underworld chart of how you get to really overcome your fear and have that self-confidence. Marianne Williamson, I think she's done my favorite quote about our deepest fear is not that we're inadequate, but our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. Oh my gosh, it's our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. So we ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? That is so Leo. Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God, and playing small doesn't serve the world. So yeah, getting over that Pluto effect for those years where so many of us were born, and now our children have parents that have been going through that. It's been a real interesting journey to see that. And I think it gives me a special love for Leo. You kind of had to fight for it.
Well, and the example you're giving about the Pluto in Leo generation, and which almost exactly matched what was called the baby boomer, the boomer generation. That's a really good example of both the shadow and light of that mystery school, where on one hand you could see the injection in a good way of Aquarius into it. It's actually inspired me in the late 60s. Actually, it went into the creation of the system, which is be your archetype, be everything you can be you, don't go along with consensus reality, find out what your true mission and purpose statement is and be that. And there's a grand diversity. I see the connection between Aquarius and Leo with the statement, be yourself, everyone else is already taken. That could apply to both Leo and Aquarius. But then it ended up degenerating into what is called the me generation, which then it became quite materialistic and quite selfish, and was pretty much disconnected from. You can see how easily it shifts from we're all everything we can be to just go for it. The reason you're not a millionaire is because you limit yourself or something like that. Well, what if your life purpose is not that one, right? So there's a necessity really to dream this forward, and I think it's the essential connection between the best of Aquarius and the best of Leo. And the idea, in a way, it's to go back to the original transmissions that came through, which are egalitarian. That every human being is a child of God, and that's the, or goddess, God, great mystery, however you want to term that. We all have a spark of divinity. It's really speaking really to the Leo nature, I believe, of the fact that human beings on this planet with our very unique DNA, we do have an opportunity to co-create with great mystery. That we have that function, but that's to be a real human being, and I think the inquiry into Leo is right on the front lines of the spiritual warfare that's taking place on the planet. What does it actually mean to be human? I'm not voting. I haven't been given a right to vote as to whether I want it to be merged with a machine. I have no, I don't believe that's what a DNA water-based human being is really, So we need to stand up for our autonomy and our sovereignty, and the fact that we are connected to divinity. We're our spiritual connection. We're the children of God, goddess. That's, I think, really important in the Leo time. And I think this Venus-Mars conjunction coming up in Leo is a very important time for that element of a kind of an inner sacred marriage process, where the masculine and the feminine are more united in this sense of autonomy and sovereignty, and recognizing each as first and foremost humans with divinity. So I mean, that's my feeling on that. you can see here from what we're discussing that the Sagittarian approach, which is enthusiastic, and then the joyful aspect of Leo, the fun, the play. I mean, oh wow, I get to make it up any way I want. Wow, this is amazing. But that's connected also into the heart. So how, if you're really coming from the heart, it cannot be I'm God and you're not. You know, there's that perception that we all are divinity, right? So I think that's the challenge here.
Yeah, I have to add something here.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I believe Leo at the turning of the age is reestablishing this link with our own divinity and reconnecting others to the point where they can co-create with great mystery. But specifically, because I have been studying energy healing, I've learned about the seat of the heart as the location of the God spot. And it actually is a physical divine cell within each of us that's now validated by science, that when felled into is a place of great power, of a place where one can heal oneself and others. And I always think of connecting with God in the sky or going into the deep emotional realm. But here, this is the as within piece of it that I've never known about. And it is so powerful. So reintroducing humanity to this, I think, is magical.
It's a very interesting insight, because there's a lot of different spiritual traditions that put the focus, say, on the Dantian, or on the or the belly center, right? And then others, the more celestial versions, they'll connect it to the crown chakra or to the pineal. I mean, those are all important, but it's the heart center that integrates them all in our genuine humanness, so it's a really good point. I think that as we are coming to the end of our exploration here today, let's look at the 6 cards, and we'll be able to get an additional way of sensing into this. So what we're going to be looking at here are the cards from the Shamanic Astrology card deck. Just go directly to the second one.
Yes, sir. There we are.
And one of the things, if you're not familiar with the Shamanic Astrology card deck, there are 3 Sagittarian cards. One is for the mystery school, one is for the masculine expression, and one is for the feminine expression. And so there's 3 different Sagittarian flavor cards. I'm not sure how people are going to be seeing this, whether it's large enough for them to sense what's happening there. So this one is the God card, the masculine expression of Sagittarius. And are you able to read that from where you sit?
Vision quest is what it says, and it says,
yes.
I seek the Holy Grail.
Yes.
Yeah, following an inner vision to the spiritual freedom.
Yeah.
Sagittarius.
So there's words. Some of those words are like the ones we've spoken of. The quest, the vision quest, is certainly one of the ceremonials associated with Sagittarius. Jupiter returns, and things like that. I mean, there's different times in our life that are truly vision quest times. And then you see the imagery there, which is expansive. Let's go to the next one.
And here we go. This is the goddess card of Sagittarius, the seeker, the seeker of the spiritual avatar, the spiritual avatar. Oh yeah, the seeker of vision, and the trail blazer on the journey. So they're leading the quest, the vision quest Amazon.
Yeah, the spiritual avatar part of it was a reference to the Tara story, who was able to gain enlightenment in a world in both Hinduism and Buddhism believed you had to be man to get enlightened, so she changed the game big time. That's why we call her Vision Quest Amazon, but also spiritual avatar. That's right, Tara. Okay, then the mystery school card.
Mystery school.
And
Sagittarius.
So the imagery is just to give a flavor to the nature of the mystery school. These cards can be used in a reading. They can be used in your own inquiry, and all three of them together work pretty nicely. The quest for meaning, purpose, and truth.
Yeah. What is the nature of divine, the holy grail of life? What is my quest? The quest for meaning and purpose and truth.
Right. And then let's go to the Leo ones.
Okay. Here we are with the Leo Mystery School with our mighty lion. What is the nature of my divinity? What is the nature of my divinity? Creation.
And you can also add to that, what is radiant, radical self-love?
Oh, yes.
And as I always like to say, when people think about self-love, what is self-love? I mean, I personally think self-love, although we identify it with the self-interest, self-exploration cards, it's actually at its full realization as part of the higher mysteries. I mean, it's really part of something that's inexplicable about how that you can actually fully realize that. But I will say, self-love is definitely not having a good week. So it's knowing that all is well in your love of self, regardless of what's happening on the outside. Right. That's really what self-love is, and it's not so easy to get to that because we all are so often connected to what the externals are telling us. Well, 100 people today smiled at me, and then that person frowned. Oh no, what did I do wrong? That's not coming from actual self-love. All right. So
it's hard. Self-worth is even so tied into that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. So thank you for that, because if you can fall into the trap of when you hear the word self-love, then that like selfish, like how, and in fact, if people are trying to work on a Leo feature of their chart, and they have things like Cancer, a lot of Cancer, or a lot of Virgo, or a lot of Capricorn, sometimes those places on the wheel will be in judgment of that. Well, how dare you? That isn't that selfish to be like that? No. Right. This is its actual valid and authentic place on the wheel. Okay, next one.
Yes, sir. Leo, the leader,
Goddess.
the Amazon queen, the warrior. Warrior.
Leo goddess, the star of the show, the radiant one, and who inspires others to be everything they can be. The vision carriers, I like to call her.
Next.
And the God one.
Leo.
Here we have this powerful little boy. And this actually reminds me of something that I learned when I lived in Asia originally. It's something they say from India. A snake knows heart. So that if you are in this place of radiant, radical self-love and joyfulness and some degree of innocence, you don't have to worry about snakes because there's really no fear, and they are our brothers. That's why some of those early images in Egypt would show that lions would actually be in the palace, and they weren't caged up. And it is said that Egypt started to fall into disrepute, into degradation, when the lions left. When they left the palace and went back into the jungle. So I mean, there's that element of that I think is really important. The innocence, but the courage of that Leo little boy there. With there's the elder image there, and then there's also the jaguar, like in or some big cat there, like the final initiation. If you're going to be the highest level of shamanic initiation in Guatemala is to have such an innocence and courage that you can pull out a whisker of a jaguar.
I have not heard that. It does say on the card that he is the self-anointed one. So
yeah, right. I'm self-anointed. You're self-anointed. That's right. You know, I am creator, and I am creator for its own sake. I get to do this. I can make it up any way I want. Right.
boy, do we need that right now at the turning of the ages. We need that leadership, and we need the self-love. So, well, this has been fun.
Yeah, I think we've taken it as far as we can in our allotted time. For those who want to have deeper dives into this, there's the books, there's the script and archetype course, and we'll be, and what's coming up next, and the next major presentation from the school is coming up. I think it's on the 10th, July 9th. In the US, which is the Zoom seminar that I'm doing with Eric Roth on the Venus and Mars conjunction in Leo. And then after that will be an event that we're creating around the cross quarter, which is the cross quarter in the sign of Leo. So a pleasure sharing this with you again, Mary. And I think we can close her down for now until next time.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I hope everybody enjoyed this, and it is being recorded. So if you want to see it again, take notes, it will be available to you.